ABCD!
Hello, happy campers. I'm Spike.
I'm Chris.
And we are geeking out. Thanksgiving has come and gone, but Disney's left us plenty of turkeys. How was your Thanksgiving, Christopher?
It was horrible.
Oh, poor baby.
A lot of food, a lot of sleeping, a lot more food, and a whole lot more sleeping. I was lazy.
There's nothing wrong with food coma.
No, there isn't. It felt good.
Well, fortunately, we got all kinds of things to talk about. We've been down for a couple of weeks for the holidays, but we've got not one, not two, but three reviews. And it's been a mighty, mighty long time since I've seen two good movies in a week. So
that's true.
So we do have reviews to come. Like I said, three reviews. Chris, where should we start? Because you have seen Napoleon. I have seen The Shift.
And we've both seen Godzilla.
Godzilla minus one.
Wear the shirt.
Should we just start strong, or should we?
Well, let's start weak and save the best for last.
So weak, I'm guessing, would be Napoleon, right?
Yes.
Yes. Chris has seen Napoleon. Go ahead, tell him all about Napoleon, Chris.
Napoleon, yes, directed by Ridley Scott, who is best known for not just doing his alien movies, but also doing like historical fact films, and Napoleon is one of them, starring Joaquin Phoenix, who stars as Napoleon in the movie. We get to learn about the history. We get to learn about his horrible marriage, I'm going to admit, this was not the movie for me, because even in history class, I always thought Napoleon was just blah, He never really interested me. I knew he was very good at, and it did show in the movie, he was really good at being, what's the word of, I'm looking for?
Short?
Well,
a blowhard? A loudmouth?
Well, all that. He was all that.
The guy who funded the canned food industry?
That was not in the movie. That was not in the movie, but he did do that. His planning when it comes to war.
Yeah, his strategy.
Strategy, that's the word.
He had the very first edition of Stratego.
Yes, and he was really good at it, and I love that about his entire life. But they didn't focus on that as much. It was mostly focused on his marriage, which was just so toxic. And he was a child. He acted like a child. If he didn't get his way, he was like, rah, 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 and stuff like that.
Out of all the things you could talk about with Napoleon, he talked about his marriage.
Oh, yeah. A lot.
Ooh.
We didn't get to the war stuff until like toward the end of the movie.
The only thing anybody actually cares about.
Honestly, yes.
Honestly, there's only three groups of people who give a rat's patootie about Napoleon. The French, because he's considered the greatest leader.
Oh, no.
The British, who still laugh to this day about beating him and locking him up on an island somewhere. And the cast of Night Court, because they always have a bunch of Napoleons standing by on skates.
I don't know if there was that much respect for him, because in the movie it pretty much clearly showed that a lot of them talked bad about him behind his back. And
well, of course, at the time, because they were his rivals. Yeah.
So, yeah. But, yeah, this movie, as for cinematic goes, or award-winning goes, this is not the movie. Ridley Scott has done better movies than this.
Like Alien.
Well, I was going to say Gladiator,
Hmm.
which was way
Never
better.
seen that film.
Oh, really? Oh, that's really good.
Mm.
But yeah, this was just a total miss for me. I know what they were trying to do, but I really didn't care. I don't care about Napoleon. I'm sorry. Like, there's a lot of world, great leaders that in history that I would say has, was good. This one, the way he acted and stuff was just, And Jacqueline Phoenix I know he's a great actor, but at the same time, he didn't, pretending to be a spoiled brat and making weird noises. He made a lot of weird noises in this movie to show that he was ready to have sex. He would sit there across the table and be like, whoop, whoop, whoop.
So in other words, he was playing himself, though.
I guess. But, nah.
Do you think this should have been like on one of the streaming services or something?
It should have been. They probably would have actually done a better job if this was one of those History Channel documentary movies,
And they've probably done it better about 1,000 times over by this
Yeah, they probably wouldn't have a bigger budget, but honestly, the budget that was spent on this movie was probably done on the war scenes, which again happened at the end of the movie. But even then, you're just sitting there kind of going like, I sat through all this crap before, so we're at the war scene, but it's like, it's kind of too late for that. Because it is a 2-hour something movie. So you get to hear about an hour and 40 minutes of him and his wife going back and forth about cheating and yelling and crying.
An hour and a half of domestic bliss.
Yeah.
No wonder.
So
let's rate this. Give it a rating, Chris, on our rule of 5. 0's not even drunk. 5 is Saturday night with a date. 4 afternoon matinee. 3 Blu-ray or DVD. 2 on Netflix. 1 on Pluto. Where would you put Napoleon?
I want to give it a 3, but I really don't want to say, hey, this is a movie enough for you to own on DVD and Blu-ray.
You think if you already
unless you're a history buff, then okay, fine.
If you already had a Netflix account, would you bother spending time watching this?
If I haven't seen it, yes.
Okay.
Is
it worth getting a Netflix account for?
Oh, hell no.
Okay, so
no.
Squarely in 2 territory.
I'll give it a 2.5.
2.5.
2.5.
Okay. So Chris gives Napoleon a 2.5. That brings us to a different movie. This is the latest release from Angel Studios. They're they're now officially the biggest Christian studio in Hollywood.
And they're doing pretty good right now too. They've been knocking
them out of the park quite a bit lately. This one is called The Shift, and this is their first effort into sci-fi. The movie is about a guy. Honestly, he and his wife are not getting along. Not as bad as Napoleon and Josephine, mind you, but they're not getting along. They have some fusses. They don't really get into why. And then all of a sudden, he gets hit by a car, and he wakes up, and he's in the middle of the street, and there's nobody around. And he wakes up, and he has Damien Dark standing over him. I don't know if you're... For the life of me, I can't remember the actor's name right now. I'm going to start taking notes on these things. But the guy who played Damien Dark back in Legends of Tomorrow and The Flash and the Arrow series, he's playing a guy known as the Benefactor. And the Benefactor has this ability to basically change the world around him any way he wants. And he can also do what's called shifting. He can shift people between dimensions. See, every decision you make branches off. You make one decision in your universe. In a different universe, you chose a different decision. In yet another universe, you didn't make a decision at all. So each of these branches off, and you can be shifted between them. Which doesn't sound so bad until you begin to realize that some of the things that you've taken for granted are not necessarily in these other dimensions. Namely, our poor hapless hero who didn't realize how much he cared for his wife, is now in a universe where she's not there. And so he's trying to find a way to get back to her. And he has to overcome the benefactor's interference in this. I don't want to get too far in the weeds on this, because if I do, I'm just going to spoil it left and right. This movie sounds like a dystopian sci-fi, okay? And it actually pulls it off decently for a studio that doesn't really have a lot of experience doing it. I mean, they've been doing more mainline Christian things. Of course, they're responsible for The Chosen and a bunch of other things. But they do communicate the central conceit of this properly. It does spend some time getting you to understand who his supporting characters are in this universe. There's a good chance he's doing all this in purgatory. There's all kinds of stuff, and this universe he's trapped in, it really is a crapsack world. The whole thing is wrapped around the benefactor, who may or may not be Satan. I've already spoiled that one for you, but but by and large, he's got to find a way to get back to his wife, who does not necessarily want to get back with him, and there's a reason why, and I'm not going to spoil that one. Either way, it's an interesting little spin on the sci-fi genre. There's enough science fiction elements there. There's enough of a dystopian element there that I think it might actually appeal to some non-Christian sci-fi fans. But by and large, it's meant for a Christian audience. It's a dystopian sci-fi. I've said that before, but it's a good first effort. It's by somebody who's new to the studio, who had presented a project. Basically, Angel Studio every once in a while just has not really open auditions, but they'll open up where people come up, present ideas, and then they present them to people who are regular sponsors of Angel Studios behind the scenes, and those backers can decide which productions go in to start moving. This was one of those. So this is from a guy who came from outside the studio. It's a good film. It's pretty well acted. It's got an interesting conceit. It does slog at times, because between one scene and another, there's a 5-year gap. Fortunately, they don't linger on it too long, but you can tell he has been through the ringer in those 5 years in between those two scenes. Like I said, there's a bit of a slog. The benefactor goes missing for those 5 years. You meet some of the people around him. The characters are developed. They're developed okay, but they're not really that well fleshed out. But again, it's all about our hero and his wife and trying to get the two reconciled again. By and large, a good first effort for a new filmmaker, and a good first sci-fi effort for a studio not known for it. On the scale of 0 to 5, I'm going to give this one probably a 3.5, because I don't want to get, like I said, I still don't want to get spoilerific, so I can't really go into details on this. But you can tell about halfway through the film that it's getting a lot more Christian. Okay, the first half of the film seems more like a straight sci-fi with religious elements to it. It gets a little preachy in the middle towards the back half of the end, and then goes into its ending. Yeah. So by and large, 3.5. I would say probably, if you like it, you probably want to get a copy on Blu-ray or DVD, which I recommend you do if you're getting media anyway, because we have a story we need to talk about a little bit later on about the Sony PlayStation and Discovery not playing nice with each other. But so I would say this might be one worth buying on Blu-ray, or if it ever comes to the Angel Studios app. Otherwise, if you're bored, it might be worth a watch. So there's a ringing endorsement for the ages right there. Okay. That's true. So that leaves the big review we've got left to do. Chris, tell the fine folks at home about Godzilla Minus One.
Yes. Listen. All right. Godzilla has been around for many years now. There has been a lot of Godzilla movies out there.
Something like 37, I think.
Wow,
Over
37,
70
really?
years, 37 films.
Wow, there's been a lot. This one here is a very big one. Why? Because it has been a very long time since a Godzilla movie has went worldwide, pretty much.
Global, yeah.
So this is a big deal. Also, this is the biggest one that I think Japan has pretty much ever worked on.
This is, there's been several Godzilla movies over the past couple of decades, but this is the first one in a long time that Toho has done on their own.
Yeah.
They did not partner with the Hollywood studio on this one. And so for a Toho solo release, be careful how Toho solo, this is the first one in a while and the first one to have a global impact.
Yeah. This now I will say this, okay? Be prepared because this movie may not be for everybody. This is all in Japanese. It does have English subtitles, okay? So yes, you do have to sit there and read.
But here's the important thing. Okay, when it comes to imported films in different languages, there's two types. There's subs and dubs. Subs are subtitles where it's printed in English on the bottom of the screen. Dubs are where they get voice actors to talk over the original foreign film. This film must be seen subtitled. Okay?
Yes.
The actors in this film are that good. You're reading the lines on the subtitles, but you can hear the inflection in their voice. Even if you don't understand a word of Japanese, you can still hear the emotion in their voice, the hope, the fear, the pain, a lot of pain. So it would really lose something if it were dubbed. You really, really want to see Godzilla Minus One with subtitles, with the original Japanese soundtrack.
The whole movie is basically based on the first appearance of Godzilla and everybody witnessing his upcoming to this world that they live in. It's also dated back in, but like I don't know if it's at the end of World War.
It started about 1945 on the last year of the war, and as they're going into the last months of the war, Germany has already fallen when this movie starts.
Because they worked a little bit with the U.S. for the
right. And the other thing too is your main character here used to be a kamikaze pilot who lost his nerve on the way to the target and brings his plane back. And he brings it back to a place called Odo Island, which is where they basically fix up kamikaze planes so they don't come back. But, and their head mechanic, who is not overly impressed with the guy, especially
after what happened.
Which
we're not going to say.
I think, hold on. I think we can actually say this because we're talking about the first 15 minutes of the film. Okay? Odo Island. Like I said, this is where the kamikaze pilots come to get their planes fixed and fueled back up and stuff. So everybody on that island is a Japanese airplane mechanic. All right. So when he comes back, the head mechanic's looking at it, and he comes over to the pilot and says, "I don't see anything wrong here, but I can't really blame you because, I mean, the war's basically over. So why would you go kill yourself for this?" And that's when Godzilla comes ashore and basically squashes everybody. He's like, I think he's 5 stories tall, maybe about 10 stories tall.
He's still a baby.
He's a baby Godzilla. And he comes in, he stomps everybody flat except for our kamikaze pilot.
And the mechanic.
And the chief mechanic. The chief mechanic tells him to jump back in his plane and use his 30mm guns to try to kill this thing. He jumps back in the plane and immediately loses his nerve again and blacks out. And that's when, so Godzilla kills everybody except for the pilot and the mechanic. By the time the pilot comes to again, the mechanic's dragging everybody over for burial, and he's lamenting how he's lost everybody, and he blames the airplane pilot, of course, for not firing his guns, which he didn't do because he didn't want Godzilla to stomp him flat either. So and you got to understand that conceit for the rest of the film to make sense. So I don't really consider that spoilerific.
Oh.
He gets back to Japan, and everybody's looking at him, and everybody in his old neighborhood is now flat.
Yeah.
It's splinters. There's wreckage everywhere because it's been bombed almost out of existence by the Americans. Not nuclear. This was a normal bombing raid and everything's made out of either sticks or paper. So everything went up or down.
Yeah, everybody's house is like a shed.
So he gets back, but the problem is the few survivors who are left out of his old neighborhood know he left and was going to be a kamikaze pilot. So knowing he's back means he was a coward, because kamikaze pilots don't come back. So everybody knows he was a coward and wussed out on his nation. Nobody wants to treat him with respect. And then he bumps into a girl at essentially the marketplace there, and the authorities are chasing her because she stole something. She hands him a baby and takes off. And the law guys go after her. So he sits there with the baby for hours waiting for her to come back. She never comes back. He's ready to leave the baby there, and he just can't leave the baby there. So he walks back, picks up the baby, walks off the main street, and bumps right into the lady who gave him the baby to begin with. Turns out it's not her baby, even though she'd been standing there waiting for him to actually get up and leave so the cops wouldn't see him. It's not her baby either. One of her, was it her neighbor or something, died and gave her the baby before she died, so none of these three are related to each other, but the whole movie winds up being revolved around.
Yeah, it's basically just taking this group of misfits who has nothing, lost everything, and is being haunted by past and stuff like that. So this movie does have a story. It's not just about Godzilla. Godzilla is just he's literally the nightmare of the movie, and these people have to overcome the nightmares pretty much.
Right. Now we don't want to get too far into this because again we don't want to spoil it. Simply put, this movie has a plot.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. This is hands down one of the best movies of the year.
Yes.
Period.
So far, yes.
And not just sci-fi, but I mean period. I said early at the top of the show, it's been a long time since I've seen two good movies in a week. I saw The Shift earlier in the week. I got to see Godzilla Minus One. The Shift was all right, but it was a good movie. But Godzilla Minus One, I'm actually half tempted to see it again just because they did it so well. And Chris, you didn't believe this when you didn't believe it. The Beloved didn't believe it. Most people don't believe it. All the Godzilla effects were not CGI. They were all practical effects. It was a dude in a rubber suit the whole time, and which is the biggest twist in the movie because it's got so much detail. You can see individual pieces of flesh on Godzilla moving. He emotes. You can tell. Of course, he's mostly angry, but you can tell when he's surprised when a mine blows up in his mouth and does some damage and starts healing. He's like, "What the heck was that?" But you can actually see Godzilla emote here when he uses his atomic breath, not just his fire breath. This is actual nuclear breath with fallout and radioactivity. And his little fins along the back of his spine start popping up and glowing blue to show he's building up an atomic charge. Those are all practical effects.
Yeah.
Dude in a suit doing this, and especially in the water scenes, those were practical effects too.
I just want to say to that, because I was going to mention about practical effects. If you are a big fan of Godzilla and you have seen the old movies and stuff, you're going to be very proud of this movie because they used miniature stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Like you can totally tell that this is a toy train moving. You can totally tell that this building does not look real, but yet at the same time you're sitting there like, oh, so fascinating because I haven't seen this stuff done in so long.
Well, the other thing too is all the models are meticulously detailed. I mean, you can tell that they've done filming in actual areas of Tokyo and some other parts of Japan, but you can't tell. It's kind of hard to tell where the real stuff ends and the models begin. It's done very well. There were a couple of just quick little FX failures in there where they did have to use CGI a couple of times. It kind of pops out. But I honestly don't know how much of the non-Godzilla stuff was practical effects. I'm pretty sure everything with Godzilla I know was practical, and I believe everything involving the plane. I don't want to get too much further into it, but that plane kicks butt. But the plane was practical effects. This is I'm of two minds as a geek on this because, all right, I've always been about the storytelling. Okay, I keep preaching about the storytelling. Have interesting characters, have an interesting plot, put them in an interesting situation, an interesting surrounding, and the audience will come. Okay, it may not come right away, but a good story told well will sell. That's pretty much my motto. And we have such well-developed characters. I mean, we've got the pilot, we've got not his girlfriend, we have not his baby, but we also have a seaboat captain. We have his first mate, the kid. We have the doc who does crazy eyes like nobody's business. There's all these supporting characters. There's the neighbor who disapproved of him because he came back as a kamikaze, but when she realizes they have a baby starving to death, steps in and helps keep the baby alive. All of these characters, and there's callback after callback after callback, and it's just so well written and so well acted.
This actually makes me want to go watch it again.
But here's the hilarious part: it is that same awe-inspiring feeling you got when you were 6 years old. You saw your first Godzilla film. You see Godzilla stomping down through Tokyo, and you're like, "Wow, that's cool." Now you're 52, and you're looking at it, and you're seeing all this fantastic detail, all the animatronics in this thing, all the fantastic shots and the visual effects. You're like, wow, and you feel like a 6-year-old again watching a Godzilla movie on the big screen. And you have to see this on the big screen. You have to see it subtitled, and you must see it on the big screen, because if you put this on TV, it's just going to fade into background noise. You want Godzilla 50 stories high. You really, this would be a perfect popcorn drive-in movie.
Yes, this movie was perfect.
This movie deserves to make all the money.
Yes.
If you've been on the fence about seeing Godzilla, if you're not a Godzilla fan because you've seen enough Godzilla movies, like, it's just more guys in rubber suits beating crap out of each other. No.
This movie is very worthy. And honestly, right now it's doing really, really well. I mean, the whole world is pretty much like, so if you want to jump on board, you should probably go see this movie.
This is the Godzilla movie for people who hate Godzilla movies, and it's the Godzilla movie for people who love Godzilla movies, and this is the Godzilla movie that none of us deserve, but we all really needed at this point.
And let's not forget, even though I don't like Rotten Tomatoes scores, because Rotten Tomatoes just
sucks, yes.
This is like, it's been a long time since they gave a movie 100%. And they gave this movie 100%.
It deserves it, and it leaves there is politics involved. There is a little bit of politics involved, but, and I'm hesitant to bring this out because politics affects everything. But there's a scene where they're trying to figure out what they need to do to stop Godzilla, because they know Godzilla's already wiped out battleships and cruisers, and the biggest boats they got had been broken in half by Godzilla and actually incinerated with its atomic breath. So they're trying to figure out what to do. Okay, the Americans can't do anything because the Russians are watching. The Russians don't care. They wouldn't mind if Tokyo gets squashed flat because they worked with the Germans. The Russians actually fought the Japanese as much as they fought the Germans. The Americans can't do anything because the Russians will take it as an act of aggression. The Japanese government won't do anything because they've been told by the Americans they're not allowed to have a military. After World War II, who could blame them? And basically, Douglas MacArthur is walking in there saying, "There's not really anything we can do. We're not allowed. We can't do anything with the Russians." So it comes up to the Navy vets of Japan. They get together. A small group of them get together with one of their big leaders who managed to avoid committing any war crimes. But a Japanese admiral who comes in, he coordinates them and says, "Look, I can't force any of you guys to do this, but the nation of Japan can't do anything. The nation of the United States can't do anything. The nation of Russia won't do anything. It's up to us. We've managed to get a hold of 4 cruisers, and that's what we've got. We got to go out there. We got to try to figure out a way to stop this guy." And some of them actually walk away because now they have families they have to take care of. They can't sacrifice for this. And none of the veterans who wind up remaining and being involved in this, none of them blames them an ounce. Just like an actual military guy would, because we know what it's like. We know you've got responsibilities to go take care of your family, rebuild Japan. We'll try to take out Godzilla and see what we can do.
And the ones who stayed was pretty much like inspired to the fact of like, if we run, Godzilla is just going to destroy more of what we have.
Right.
If we fight, we might die, but it's like, we got to do something.
we might be able to protect our kids or somebody else's kids.
Like
we can
got to
protect
do
the future of Japan.
So, and that's what inspired them to fight back. But yeah, this is... Damn. This is a really good movie.
One more complicating factor here is that we've seen Godzilla in other movies. He takes all these shots and everything. He falls down. His eyes may go dark or something, show he's been knocked out or something. But you see like little scratches and stuff, but you never really see him bleed. You see Godzilla take some severe damage in this movie.
Yeah, he takes a lot.
And but he heals. He's got a Wolverine healing factor that's even more aggressive than Wolverine's from the X-Men. So you can blow up stuff in his face, and his face regenerates in real time right in front of you. And then he starts trying to eat you again. So this is kind of like the T-Rex in Jurassic Park, but what the T-Rex in Jurassic Park thought he was. So it is fantastic from start to finish. Chris, rule of 5, do we even need to discuss this? It's a 5. It's a 5 on both of our parts.
Actually, let's double that. 10. It is a beyond.
This is, if you're a geek, this is a must-see. It's a slam dunk. Don't even argue. You need to see this. You need to get in the theaters. You need to watch it and experience it the best way you can, subtitled and on the biggest screen you can find. And I hope to goodness that Toho re-releases this for Memorial Day or the 4th of July or something, because this would be an awesome drive-in movie. This would be the perfect drive-in movie.
It would be an awesome movie. It would be an awesome movie to have. It would be awesome if they came out with a collector's pack of Godzilla films with this movie.
This is one of those films that sells the big screen TVs. It really is.
Yes.
It's one of those things, kind of like the first Avengers, because there was just so much action and so many wide shots and everything. You wanted the biggest thing you could find.
That's true, actually. Yeah.
That big screen TV you got for Avengers Endgame, go ahead and toss it out. Buy the biggest one you can find now, because you're going to want that Godzilla Blu-ray for sure. If you can get it in 4K, even better, or in 8K. Hey, have at it, buddy. But it is a fantastic watch. So. Yes. 5s for us on that one. Now, was there anything else left to do, Chris? Or I know you've got some cards over there, but no. We'll save them for next time because we got more Godzilla -1 to watch. So, final word on our 3 reviews. Napoleon,
if you like history, go for it. But
in a word, Napoleon, meh. In a word, The Shift, worth the trip. And Godzilla -1, yes. Okay, so until next time, Spike,
Chris,
and y'all keep on geeking out.
Bye.
See you at the movies.